Before we start this video, let me quickly explain how it was produced and why it took so long to produce. Having never created an inventory system before, I first had to learn how to produce one, so I started watching YouTube tutorials. 2x speed for good measure. The hard part wasn't learning how to create an inventory system, the hard part was trying to reduce the huge amounts of information you need to know into an easy to follow, simple and straight to the point tutorial. So instead of doing the easy option and copying a pre-existing inventory system, I said, F it. I'm going to create my own inventory system from scratch, which cuts out anything unnecessary so my viewers can get straight to the good stuff. And now, I'm proud to present a completely free inventory system, blueprinted in what I believe to be the simplest way possible. Features include picking up and dropping items, stacking items, and item descriptions. This comes with a customizable UI along with the Photoshop files, allowing you to easily create more UI items. And finally, free consumables, which can easily be blueprinted to fit your game's needs. From me to you, hope you guys enjoy it, and thank you so much for supporting my channel. What's up guys, and welcome to another video. The link to the download is in the description, but before you do that, I've actually got two options for you to consider. The first is to download the entire inventory system in its entirety and try and figure it out by flicking through the video. I've actually left some comments on the wall to try and help you guys figure it out, but I wouldn't recommend this option. The inventory system is pretty complex, even though I've simplified it down as much as possible, so if you're feeling brave, go for it, but I wouldn't recommend it. The second option is to join me in this tutorial and we'll go through it step by step and you'll get a real understanding for it. I personally believe to learn Unreal, you have to know everything that's going on. You have to know how something connects with something, how something passes information to another thing. And when you know all that, then you can scrap all the tutorials and you can begin on your own adventures of making whatever you want. So I'd suggest following this option, but if you want to just download it, feel free, I'm giving it to you guys. Whatever you guys want is good. So for those of you following me on the tutorial, nice one. I need you guys to click the first link in the description. It's just something to start with so we don't spend too long wasting time on things which don't really matter. And those of you who just want to download the inventory system, thank you for watching the video this far. I really do appreciate it. You guys need to click the second link in the description and that will download the whole lot for you. So guys, when you've downloaded the tutorial package, you will have a project which looks something like this. All I need you to do is take the migrate folder, right click, migrate, and click OK and migrate all of that to your main project content folder. So guys, when you've migrated it, you should have a lovely folder called migrate here just sitting in your content browser. And for anyone following the tutorial series, I just thought it was worth mentioning that I've just built another room coming off all our other rooms. Okay, let's get into this now. So let me quickly give you a rundown of what I've given you guys so far. So in our consumables, we have all the different potions, and all these are just a static mesh with a severe collision box around them. We've got an event tick which just makes them rotate, and they've got a use item function which I just left in there. Materials and textures, pretty self-explanatory. These are just the materials used for the different bottles, and then the textures. So these icons here, I actually got these off a website. I'll leave a link in the description. They're all free for use, and I made the inventory system background. And this blank is just a blank image with nothing in, just for our widgets to hold on to until we fill it with an icon. So now for the UI, the widgets. So this is where all the blueprints are going to be happening. Obviously I've deleted all the blueprints for now, but I just wanted to give you the initial widget to save some time. So let me just quickly explain what's going on here. So this is an inventory slot. This is where one of our items are going to sit. All we've got here is basically a canvas panel, size box, overlay. This is just to hold things in the right place. Then we've got an image. This has got the blank image texture, so this is nothing at the moment, and this is where we're going to put our icon image. Then we've got the quantity, which is going to be how many of the item we have. This is just their text. Then we've got a button. This is going to be when we click on the button, we're going to be able to use and drop the items, etc. Then we've got the drop and use HUD here. We've actually brought in the other widget we've made here. This is where this will sit when we bring it up. And the description, this is just a text render where our description of the item is going to go. The used drop HUD is just two buttons with a text on top. And for the inventory, this looks really complex, but it's really not. All it is an image with the texture that I made here. This is the inventory background texture. We've just thrown that onto a image slot, put it in a canvas panel so we can move the canvas panel around, and then the big canvas panel which will just lock it into the center. And then we've just added lots of the inventory slot widgets. As I said, you can add widgets to other widgets, so we've just got all our inventory slots here. We've only got up to 6, so if you want to add any more, you can either right click and duplicate this, or you can just bring in inventory slot widget and you pull it into your canvas panel. In terms of functionality, All we've got is a few custom functions which are left in here, and all I did was when we construct this widget, we're going to make an array, and we're going to add all of our inventory slots to this array. So if you want to add another inventory slot, you just click add pin, make another inventory slot, control to bring it in, then just connect it in like that. This just means we can call upon each one of those inventory slots and go through them when we need to. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is open up our character blueprint. What we want to do here is just bring in our inventory. So we're going to right click, begin play. If it's already got something, that's no problem. What we're going to do is create widget. So what we want to do is create our inventory widget. Make sure you do the inventory, not the inventory slot. Then we're just going to promote this to a variable, call it inventory widget. Okay, so now we've actually created our widget. Now we just need to call it, open it, and close it when we press I, or a key press. So I'm going to use I for inventory. So if you just type in I, maybe I key, then bring in your inventory widget we just made. Bring in a flip-flop. So this will be, what this will do is when we press this once, it'll do A. If we press this again, it'll then do B. Pretty simple. Then off our inventory widget, we're just going to add to viewport. Then we can drag off our inventory and remove from parent. So this is going to add and take it away from our screen when we press I, but we actually want to make it so our mouse cursor is shown, and when we move our mouse, the camera of our character doesn't go all over the place. So we're going to get player controller, and then we're going to set show mouse cursor to true. We're going to duplicate this with Control and W, plug this into the player controller, then we're going to uncheck it. So now to stop the camera moving around when we move our mouse, we actually need to set the game mode. So if you drag off your player controller, set input mode, game and UI. Widget to focus is going to be our inventory widget. Control and drag that in. So now when we close the inventory, we want our mouse to be able to control the camera again and not to be locked into the screen. So we're going to drag off this and set input mode game only. Now if we compile and save this, we should have our inventory system opening and closing. Here it is, our dude. If we press I, it opens, our mouse locks, and then if we close it, our mouse goes back to the camera and the inventory system closes. So now we're going to implement something so we can interact with our consumable. So what we can actually do is make a blueprint interface. So if you right click under blueprint, create a blueprint interface. A blueprint interface basically holds certain functions, and these can be applied to lots of different blueprints. So we're just going to call this interact, as this is going to be our way of interacting. So we're going to double click to open it up, and we're just going to make a function, and we're just going to call this interact. And that's all we're going to do here. So what I need you to do is open up each one of your consumables. Then under class settings, if you click this, on the right under interfaces, you can add your interact interface. As you can see, I've already done it, so it's not showing up. But if you just click add, find your interact interface or whatever you call it, then bring it in. Now if you press compile and you right click and type in interact, whoops. So I know it's quite hard to get your head around, but just think of this blueprint interface as a way of calling these different events from all these different consumables without casting to all of them. So we don't need to cast a health potion, cast a mana potion. We can just cast them using this blueprint interface, and it's just a more simpler and tidier way of doing things. Okay, so now go back onto your character blueprint. Now we're going to be able to interact with these different consumables because they've got this event interface. So what we're going to do is I'm going to type in E key, because I want this to be my key where I'll interact with an object. Yours can be anything you want. And we're going to right click, get overlapping actors. Type in actor, and then we're going to pull off this array and do for each loop. Okay, so what this getting overlapping actors does is basically it checks within all the blueprints, because blueprints are actors, if you are overlapping them. And because on these consumables that we made, or that I gave to you, they've got this sphere, this will detect if we're overlapping them. So back on our crash, when we press E, we're going to check what actors we're overlapping. Then we're going to pull off this and does implement interface. Then we're going to type in the interface here. Then we're going to do a branch, loop this, and then we're going to pull off for each loop, and we're going to interact. I actually did a wrong node here. I meant to write for each loop with break. So just bring that in instead. Bring that array into there. Bring that into there. And then bring that into there. When we find a consumable we can interact with, we no longer want to keep looking for anything to interact with. Okay, let me explain quickly what this is doing. So when we press our desired hotkey, we're looking for all the actors that we're overlapping. If they have the interface interact in their class settings, which our consumables now do because we just set that up. If that's true, we're going to fire off the message interact, which will fire this message, this message, this message, depending which one we're overlapping. Then when we fired one off, we're going to stop doing this, so we only interact with one. So now we can test this out by bringing our consumables into the level. Dunk, dunk, dunk. Then I'm just going to pull off this and destroy actor. So press E, gets destroyed, gets destroyed, gets destroyed. So that's all working great. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to give all these items some characteristics. We're going to give them, are they consumable, are they stackable? So we're going to go back onto our content browser, we're going to right click, create blueprint and create a structure. And a structure is basically kind of like a database. It can hold different variables that you set. So we're just going to call this item info structure. And double click to open this up. So this is what a structure looks like. It looks a bit scary if you haven't seen one before, but it's very simple. So the first thing we're going to do, we've already got a variable here. So we're just going to call this name. That's going to be the name of our variable, and we're going to make it a string. Then we're going to add a new variable, call this icon. Then under the variable type, we're going to call it texture 2D. If you're wondering why I keep looking over here, it's because I keep on looking at my already built inventory system, so I know what to do. Then we're going to create a new variable. Is it stackable? And this is going to be a boolean. New variable, item class. What type of item is it going to be? And for this, we're just going to type in our health potion. So it's basically just going to be an actor, and make sure you do class reference. Then new variable, description. This is going to be what's going to be describing our item, and that's going to be a string. So for the default values, this is what they're going to be as default. And we're going to click stackable to true, and we're just going to type none in here. Then we're just going to save. Then close this down. Then go into your first consumable. Now we're going to create a variable and bring in this structure. So we're going to new variable, type in item info. Then under variable type, type in item info structure. So now we've brought in this structure. If you click compile, pull the arrow down, we can now start giving this item some attributes. So name, health potion, icon is going to be the health potion icon. Stackable, we want it to be stackable. And then health potion, description, heals 50 plus points. Just go on to your consumables. If you right click, duplicate your health potion, call this mana potion 2, duplicate health potion again, call this stamina potion 2, open up your mana potion 2, just change the static mesh from health to mana, compile, stamina potion 2, change it from health to stamina as the color. So now for the mana potion, make sure you change this to mana potion and the mana potion icon restores 50 plus mana. Same for the stamina potion. Restores 50 plus stamina. So we've got our consumables with all their data. What we need to do now is pass that information over to the inventory widget. So what we're going to do is go onto our content browser, under UI, under inventory, and in the graph, you can see there's already some events here. So this is going to add the item to the inventory. But what we need to do now is add an input to this, so this variable can be passed from our consumables, the item info can be passed from our consumables to our inventory. So we're going to add an input. We're going to call this the item info. Then under the variable type, we're going to bring in our item info structure. So now we've got a custom event which we can pass the information to. Now we need to pass the information. So back onto our consumables. we're actually creating the inventory widget in our character. Under event begin play, we create the inventory widget and we call it inventory widget as a variable. So what we need to do is get player character, cast to our character, mine's called crash car. Then we can pull off this and we can actually get that widget that we made. And now we've got the reference to the widget in our inventory. We can call the add to inventory function. Add to inventory function. Now we can bring in our info that we've got in each one of our consumables. So this has all the data about our consumables, and we can pass that to our inventory system using this function. So now our inventory system, when we overlap and interact with this consumable, we're passing this information over to the inventory, and it's coming out here. So now back on our health potion consumable, if we copy all this for our other potions, stamina potion and mana potion, depending which one we interact with, as all of them have different information stored, we're going to pass different information over to the inventory system, and the inventory system can then use that. So now at the end of our consumables, we just want to destroy the actor. So we pass the information over to the inventory system, then we destroy the actor. So I'm just pasting this over to our mana and stamina potion, like so. Okay, so we have all the information being passed over to our inventory widget, which will then apply it to our inventory slot. So first we need to do a bit of work on our inventory slot. Under UI, inventory slot. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to create our use and drop item widget. We won't use this till later, but it's good to get this out of the way. Create widget, then use drop HUD. So this will be when we click on our item, then the use drop item widget will appear, and then we're going to just promote this to a variable. Call this use drop HUD widget. Okay, that's stored as a variable. Cool. So what we'll be doing is we'll be passing the item information to the inventory here, and then we'll pass this to an available slot after we've blueprinted it. So we're going to add an input, and this is going to be our item info that we pass. And it's going to be the struct again, item info structure. Then we'll promote this to a variable just so we don't have to keep referencing this bit, and this will just be the item info. Now let's set some things in our widget, so we can set the image, we can set the quantity and description, etc. So first we're going to make a variable called current quantity, and this is going to be an integer. This will be storing our quantities. Pull this in with control drag, then we're going to +1 to it, because when we add an item to this slot, we're going to be plussing 1 to it. If there's already a quantity of 1, then it will add 1, so it will appear as 2. Then we're going to set alt drag in our current quantity and set our new current quantity as +1. Then we're going to bring in our image. This will be the icon image. By default, it's set to blank. Yep, it's set to blank here, so nothing's appearing. Then we're going to set brush from texture, get our item info, so the item info that was passed to us. We're going to split this open, and in goes the texture that we've got from the item. Then we're going to set the quantity, so bring in our quantity. This is just a text variable, and we're going to set text, and this will be our current quantity we made. Although this is an int, if you plug it into the text, it will get converted to a text like so. Plug that together. Then we're going to do the description, so bring in our description text. We're going to set text again. And what we'd usually do is just pull in the description here, but we actually want it to say description in front of it. So we're going to append. This is how you combine two strings together. So this will be our start, description space, plug in our description here, and that will convert it to a string. So now, when we get an item added to the slot, we're going to create a variable with all the details of the item. We're going to +1 to our current quantity. Then we're going to set the texture to whatever the icon texture was from our item that we picked up. Then we're going to set the quantity to +1, which we already did over here. and then we're going to set the description to whatever the description is, but we're going to add description bracket bracket in front of it. And then we just need to make one more variable called filled question mark, and this is going to be a boolean. So when we set an item to this slot, it is going to be filled. So for these widgets, the inventory system, all this is going to do is find an available slot in the inventory slots here by cycling through the array, finding a free one, and then we're going to send the information over to a free slot, or if we've already got a slot there, we're going to +1 to the quantity. In the inventory slot, this is where we'll be doing all the functionality of that slot. So if you want to use the item, if you want to drop the item, if you want to show or hide the drop menu, it'll all be done in the inventory slot. So inventory, finding a free slot, inventory slot, all the functionality of the slot. So before we add any functionality to our inventory slot, let's just do the inventory so we can assign slots for all the different items. So the first thing we want to do when we pick up an item is check if there's an item that's already in the inventory which is the same, so we can just +1 to the quantity. So in the top left, I've actually already made a function for this procedure, and we're going to add an input with the information data of the item. So under input, call this item info, and it's already got, if it doesn't, type in item info structure, so it's going to be our structure. So this is going to be the details of our item. So we're going to bring in our inventory slot array. So this is just all the inventory slots, so we're going to cycle through them to see if any of them already have an item in which is the same. Then we're going to do for each loop with break, then connect this up and add a branch with holding B and click. So all our inventory slots which have an item in it will actually have the item information stored in it as the item info variable we made. So what we can do is we can get that item info, get item info, we can split it apart, then we can get the item that we've just picked up, that information, and break it apart. Then if the item we picked up's name is the same as any of the names in the inventory slot, so if there's a health potion in one of these inventory slots, if the item we just picked up also has the name health potion, then we can just add a quantity. So we'll do an equal sign. So if they're the same, plug that into the branch. And if the item we've just picked up is stackable, because even if they have the same name, if they're not stackable, we want them to be in 2 different slots. If they're stackable, we're then going to call the function in our inventory slot add item. So pull off this, set item to slot. And then the item we're going to be bringing in is going to be the item we just picked up. But if the item we picked up doesn't have the same name as any of our items in our inventory, we then want to call the check available slot variable function, which will check if there's an available slot and then assign it. So off completed, we want to then check available slot. But then there's a problem with this, because if we set the item to the slot, when this eventually completes, we're then going to check for an available slot, even though we've already assigned the item. So we only want to do this if we haven't found an item where we can increase the quantity. So what we can do is create a variable, call it item set. I know this may seem confusing for now, but it will all make sense when it's all completed. So we're going to set this to true. So we have found an item, and then we're going to stop this from looping anymore. Just going to add a reroute node here by double clicking. And then we only want to check available slot if we haven't found an item. So bring this in with control and drag, bring in a branch. If the item has been set, we don't want to do anything. But if it hasn't, we want to find an available slot for the item. We then just need to set this item set back to false for when we pick up another item, it can go through the same process again. So we're going to alt drag this in and set this back to false. So let's run it down real quick. We're going through each inventory slot. Does any of the inventory slots have an item with the name, which is the same name that we just picked up? If it does, is it stackable? If it is, we're going to add 1 to the quantity to the slot. Then we're going to stop the array from happening, set the item set to true because we found an item, and then it's just going to come off here once it's completed. If we have found an item, we're just going to set it to false and do nothing. If we haven't found a slot with the same name, we can then check for available slot. If all these come off false, it's just going to keep on cycling through this until all the inventory slots are over, then it's going to complete and do that. So now we've done this, we can go back onto our event graph and do the check available slot. So the first thing we're going to do is bring in our function, check item already exists, and then we're going to plug that in like so. So we're checking if the item already exists. If it doesn't, we're then going to check for an available slot, which we're going to blueprint right now. So now we're going to bring in our inventory slots again. For each loop with break, so we're going to cycle through all of them and find the first one which isn't filled. Filled is the variable we made in our inventory slot. When an item is applied to it, we're setting filled to true. So then if it is filled, it's going to ignore that slot and move on to the next one. So if it's not filled, we're going to set item in the inventory slot. Set item to slot. And the item we're going to set is the one we've just picked up. Then we just want to break this to stop it looping around, so it only adds one item to the slot. So that's us pretty much done with the inventory already. Now we just need to do all the functionality in the inventory slot. So now if we bring a load of items into our level, we can now pick them up. So if you press E, we've noticed we picked up a health potion. You don't actually have to have the inventory up, it's just easier to display. If I press E, it picks up. As the mana potion doesn't have the same name as the health potion, it's moved to the next available slot. This is a stamina potion, and now we're picking up another health potion. As it does have the same name, all we're doing is adding one to the quantity. So it's already looking really cool. Now we just need to add the functionality of using the item, dropping the item, and yeah. So one little thing I've just noticed when testing that out is that when you first pick up an item, it won't actually work until you open and close your inventory. So what we need to do is go onto our third person character. When we have our inventory, we just want to add it to viewport, and then straight after that, we want to remove from viewport, remove from parent. So now it'll open and close it quickly so it exists, and then our items can start going into our inventory without us having to open and close it first. So guys, I'm actually going to split this video into two parts. I've been told by numerous subscribers that they prefer it when it's short and sweet tutorials instead of long ones, so I'm splitting it up. But in the next episode, which will be released straight away, we're going to be doing the functionality of the items, using, dropping, using the items, etc. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for part 2.